What you are about to hear changed the lives of two women forever. Two strangers, two different cities, 40 years without knowing the other even existed. And around each of their necks, the same medal of the Virgin Mary with the same name engraved on the back, a miracle of the Virgin Mary that took 4 decades to be completed. And it all began with a DNA test that neither of them should have taken. But before we continue, leave a comment saying where you are watching from and what time it is there right now. I would love to see how far the miracles of the Virgin Mary are reaching. Chicago, fall of 2023. You know that nurse who seems to be everywhere at the same time? The one patients ask for by name when they arrive at the hospital? Sarah was that nurse, 43 years old, brown hair always pulled back into a practical bun. Dark circles under her eyes that she no longer even tried to hide. She had worked the night shift for 15 years, not by choice, by necessity. A single mother of 2 children. Her ex-husband had disappeared when the youngest was still in diapers. Sarah didn't complain, she never had. She had a way of looking at patients that made them feel safe, a way of holding the hand of someone who was afraid that seemed to say, "I'm here, everything will be okay." But there was one thing no one at the hospital knew about Sarah. Under her uniform, hidden between fabric and skin, she wore a medal of the Virgin Mary. Small, worn down by time. The chain had been replaced 3 times over the years, but the medal had been the same for as long as she could remember. Sarah was not religious. She didn't go to church. She didn't pray before going to sleep. But that medal she never took off. When someone asked why, she would shrug. It came with me. That was the only answer she had, because it was the only answer she knew. Sarah had been adopted when she was just a few days old. Her adoptive parents, wonderful people she loved deeply, told her the truth when she turned 18. "You came with this medal," her adoptive mother said that day. "The only thing your biological mother left with you." Sarah turned the medal in her hand. On the back, an engraving almost erased by time. A last name, a date. March 15th, 1980. The day she was born, Sarah kept that information. She never tried to find out more. Life kept moving forward. Marriage, children, divorce, work, bills. The medal stayed there around her neck, like a silent reminder of something she could not explain. Have you ever had an object like that? Something you carry without knowing exactly why, but that feels too wrong to take off. 10 years earlier, winter in Chicago. Sarah was heading home from the hospital after a 16-hour shift. Snow had started to fall heavily. Traffic was slow. She could barely keep her eyes open. On a curve, the car in front of her braked suddenly. Sarah braked too late. The car skidded on the ice. Everything happened in slow motion, the steering wheel spinning on its own. The windshield closing in on the guardrail, the sound of metal against metal. And in the middle of all that, without thinking, Sarah brought her hand to her neck. She grabbed the medal. The car stopped just inches from the precipice. When the police arrived, the officer looked at the car, looked at the guardrail, looked at the abyss on the other side. "Ma'am, you're very lucky to be alive." Sarah didn't answer. She was still holding the medal. Coincidence? Reflex? Protection? She never knew, never asked. She only knew that day, something prevented the worst from happening. Denver, same period. On the other side of the country, 2,000 miles away, another woman woke up every day at 5 in the morning. Rachel was a veterinarian. She had a small clinic specialized in large animals, horses mainly. She spent more time on farms than in the city. 43 years old. Brown hair she kept loose. A sunburned face of someone who lives outdoors. Rachel was married, 2 teenage children. A life that, from the outside, looked complete. But Rachel carried an emptiness that no one could fill. She had known she was adopted since she was 12. Her adoptive parents never hid it. But unlike Sarah, Rachel always wanted to know more. Who was her biological mother? Why was she given up for adoption? Were there siblings out there somewhere? The questions never stopped. And just like Sarah, Rachel also wore a medal of the Virgin Mary, small, worn by time. The same medal for as long as she could remember. Rachel was more open to faith than Sarah. She went to Mass from time to time, prayed when she felt the need. But her connection to the medal went beyond religion. It was as if the medal were a part of her, an extension of her own body. On the back, the same engraving, almost worn away, a surname, a date, March 15th, 1980. Rachel looked at that date every year on her birthday. She ran her finger over the engraving, tried to imagine who had done that, who had taken the trouble to engrave a name and a date on such a small medal, and why. 5 years earlier, a farm on the outskirts of Denver. Rachel was tending to a horse that had been badly injured. The animal was nervous, frightened, kicking in every direction. The farm owner had warned her, "Doctor, be careful. He's already injured 3 people this week." Rachel approached slowly, speaking softly, trying to calm him down. But the horse wouldn't listen. He was in panic. Suddenly, the animal reared up. Its front hooves passed just inches from Rachel's head. She fell backward. The horse came toward her. And then it stopped. It simply stopped. The animal looked at Rachel, lowered its head, stood still, as if something had changed in the air. The farm owner couldn't believe it. "I've never seen him do that. Never." Rachel got up slowly, her heart still racing, and she realized that the entire time her hand had been on her neck, holding the medal. A feeling of peace had taken over her in that moment, a peace that made no sense, considering she had almost been trampled. Coincidence, animal instinct, something more. Rachel didn't know. She only knew that once again the medal was there, as it always had been. The dreams began when Rachel turned 30. Always the same dream, a woman, a face she didn't recognize, brown hair, eyes that seemed far too familiar. The woman never spoke. She just stood there, looking at Rachel with an expression she couldn't decipher. Sadness? Longing? Recognition? Rachel would wake from these dreams with a strange feeling in her chest, as if she were missing someone she had never known. For years, she thought it was her biological mother, the woman who had given her up for adoption, the subconscious trying to fill a void. But something was wrong. The woman in the dream didn't look older than Rachel. She looked like she was the same age. Rachel told her husband once. He said it was normal. Dreams are weird. She never talked about it again, but the dreams continued for 13 years. Always the same woman, always the same feeling that something was missing. Have you ever dreamed of someone you've never seen in your life, but who felt so real that you woke up looking for that person? December 2022. 1 year earlier. Sarah was on her break during a shift when a coworker showed up with a gift box. "I did an ancestry DNA test. A Christmas gift to myself. You should do one too, Sarah. You never know. You might find out you're related to some European king." Sarah laughed. "Me? I barely have time to sleep, let alone take a DNA test." But the idea stuck in her mind. Adopted. No information about her biological family. 43 years of unanswered questions. In January, Sarah bought the kit, mailed it in, and forgot about it. Life went on. Shifts, children, bills. The relentless routine of those who don't have time to stop. 3 months later, the email arrived. "Your results are ready." Sarah opened it during her lunch break, expecting to see percentages of European ancestry, maybe a bit of something unexpected. What she saw was different. First-degree relative found, match 50%. Possible relationships, father-mother or brother-sister. Sarah dropped her phone. This made no sense. No one had ever mentioned a sibling. No one had ever mentioned anything. It had to be a system error. It had to be. She closed the app, put the phone away, went back to work. But she couldn't get it out of her head. Denver, April 2023, 4 months later. Rachel took the test for a different reason. Medical history. The doctor had asked about diseases in the family. Rachel had to answer for the 1,000th time, "I'm adopted, I don't know." Her husband suggested an ancestry test. These tests show genetic predispositions now. It could be useful, Rachel agreed. She wasn't thinking about finding relatives. She was thinking about finding out whether she was at risk of developing any disease. 6 weeks later, the results arrived. She opened them expecting to see health information. What she saw was different. First-degree relative found, match 50%. Possible relationships, father, mother, or brother, sister. Rachel stared at the screen long enough for the phone to turn itself off. She could have a brother who had also taken the test, a brother who was somewhere out there, a brother who existed. The dreams came back with force that night. The woman with chestnut hair, the familiar eyes, the expression Rachel had never been able to decipher. Could it be her? The DNA system offered an option. Send a message to the matched relative. Rachel didn't hesitate. She wrote that very night. "Hello, my name is Rachel. The test showed that we are close relatives. I was adopted in 1980 and never knew I had siblings. If you'd like to talk, I'm here." And she waited. On the other side, in Chicago, Sarah saw the notification 3 days later. Message from a matched relative. Her finger hovered over the screen. Open it or ignore it. For a week, Sarah ignored it, but the message stayed there, waiting. One night, after a particularly difficult shift, Sarah opened it. "Hello, my name is Rachel. The test showed that we are close relatives. I was adopted in 1980. 1980, the same year." Sarah felt a chill run down her spine. She replied, "My name is Sarah. I was also adopted in 1980, March." Rachel's reply came within seconds. "Me too, March 15th. Sarah dropped her phone as if it had caught fire. March 15th. The same day, the same date engraved on the back of the medal. That couldn't be a coincidence. That couldn't be real. But it was. In the days that followed, the messages didn't stop. "Do you have any photos?" Rachel sent the message first. Sarah looked at the screen and felt her legs give way. It was like looking into a mirror. The same face, the same hair, the same eyes. How was that possible? Sarah sent a photo back. Rachel had the same reaction. "Twins," Rachel wrote. "We're twins." The word felt too surreal to be true. Sarah had spent 43 years without knowing she had a sister, a twin sister. A half of herself that existed on the other side of the country, living a completely different life. The messages continued, discovery after discovery. "Are you right-handed or left-handed?" "Left-handed." "Me too." "What's your favorite color?" "Green." "Mine too." With every message, the sense of unreality grew stronger. How could two people be so alike without ever having known each other? And then came the question that changed everything. "Do you have any object from your biological mother?" Sarah hesitated. She looked at her neck. The medal was there, as always. "A medal of the Virgin Mary." Rachel's reply took longer than usual. "I also have a medal of the Virgin Mary." Sarah felt her heart race. "What does yours look like?" "Small, with an engraving on the back." "What engraving?" "A last name and a date, March 15th, 1980. Sarah couldn't reply. Exactly the same. Her medal was exactly the same. From that moment on, the conversation changed. They were no longer two strangers exchanging messages. They were two sisters trying to understand what had happened to their lives. "We need to meet," Rachel wrote. Sarah agreed, but she was afraid. Afraid of what exactly? She didn't know. Maybe that all of it was a dream. maybe that the meeting wouldn't live up to expectations, maybe that reality would be far too disappointing. They chose a place halfway between them, a cafe near the airport. Neutral territory for both. The date was set, June 15th, 2023. 3 months of anxiety. Sarah didn't tell anyone at work. She told her children only that she was going to visit a friend. The fear of explaining was too great. Rachel told her husband. He didn't believe it at first. But when he saw the photos, when he heard about the coincidences, he fell silent. "Go," he said. "You need to go." And she went. Kansas City, June 15th, 2023. Sarah arrived first. She chose a table near the window, ordered a coffee she couldn't drink. Her hands were shaking. Her heart was beating far too fast. What if it wasn't real? What if it was someone different? What if... The cafe door opened and time stopped. It was like looking at a mirror that had come to life. Rachel was standing at the entrance. The same face, the same hair, the same eyes filled with tears. Neither of them could speak. Rachel walked toward the table, slowly, as if she were afraid that Sarah might disappear if she moved too fast. They embraced without saying a word. 43 years apart, and now, finally, together. Can you imagine what it's like to find a part of yourself you didn't even know existed? They stayed in that cafe for 6 hours. 6 hours of stories, of comparisons, of laughter and tears mixed together. Sarah talked about Chicago, about her work as a nurse, about her children, about the marriage that didn't work out, about the night shifts that never seemed to end. Rachel talked about Denver, about life in the countryside, about the horses, about her husband and children, about the constant feeling that something was missing. "I dreamed about you," Rachel said at one point. "For years. A woman I didn't know. It was you. It was always you." Sarah didn't have the dreams, but she had something else. "In the hardest moments of my life," she said, "I always had the feeling that I wasn't alone, as if someone was with me, even when I was completely by myself." Rachel nodded. "Me too." Twin connection? Something else? Neither of them could explain it. And then, without warning, Sarah raised her hand to her neck, an automatic gesture. She did it whenever she was nervous or emotional. The metal was there, as always. Rachel saw the movement, saw the discreet glint of metal, and froze. "Sarah, what is that on your neck?" Sarah pulled the metal out from under her blouse. "The metal, the one I told you about in the messages." Rachel fell silent for a long moment, her eyes fixed on the object. Then, slowly, she brought her hand to her own neck and pulled out an identical medal, exactly the same image of the Virgin Mary, the same size, the same wear, in the same places. Sarah felt the tears return. "Turn it," she said. "Turn yours over." Rachel turned it, the same last name, the same date. March 15th, 1980. 2 medals, 2 sisters, 43 years apart, and now, side by side. What are the chances of that happening? After that day, the sisters were never apart again. Daily phone calls, constant messages, visits whenever possible. But one question lingered in the air. Who was their biological mother? Why did she separate the twins? And why did she give one medal to each of them? They began to search. The adoption records were old. Many files had been lost. But little by little, piece by piece, the story began to emerge. The biological mother's name was Margaret. She was 19 when she became pregnant, single, without family, without money. When she found out they were twins, she fell into despair. How could she raise 2 children alone? How could she give a decent life to 2 girls when she could barely survive herself? The decision to put them up for adoption was the hardest of her life. But she had one condition. I want them to carry something of mine, something that connects them, something that protects them. She had 2 medals of the Virgin Mary made, identical, with the last name and date of birth engraved on the back, one for each daughter. And she made a request to the Virgin Mary. Please one day bring my daughters together. Please one day let them meet. A desperate mother's prayer, repeated every day, for 43 years. The hardest part was finding out whether Margaret was still alive. 43 years is a long time. A lot can happen. The sisters hired a private investigator. Weeks of searching, false leads, dead ends, and then finally an answer. Margaret was alive. She lived in a small town in rural Pennsylvania, alone. She never married. She never had other children. And she was sick. Her condition is fragile, the investigator said. She doesn't have much time. Sarah and Rachel looked at each other. 43 years of waiting, and now racing against the clock. They took a plane the next day. Pennsylvania. A small house on a quiet street. Sarah and Rachel stood hand in hand on the sidewalk, staring at the closed door. "Are you ready?" Rachel asked. Sarah wasn't, but she nodded anyway. Her heart was beating so hard she could feel the pulse in her neck. The metal felt heavier than ever. They rang the doorbell. Seconds felt like hours. And then the door opened. A 62-year-old woman, white hair, a face marked by time, eyes that Sarah and Rachel knew very well. They were the same eyes they saw in the mirror every day. Margaret looked at the two women at her door. For a second, it seemed she was going to faint. Her hand gripped the door. Her body swayed, and then she understood. "You came," she said, her voice trembling, tears already streaming down her face. "After all this time, you came." Sarah couldn't speak. Her throat was tight. Rachel stepped forward. "Mom," she said. It was the first time anyone had ever called Margaret Mother. The word broke something inside her. Margaret collapsed. She would have fallen if her daughters had not held her. There at the door of that small house, 3 women embraced for the first time, 1 mother, 2 daughters, 43 years of waiting. How long is 43 years? It is enough time for an entire life to happen, for children to be born, grow up, and have children of their own, for hair to darken and then turn white, for dreams to be fulfilled and others to be abandoned. 43 years is too long to wait, but Margaret waited, every day, every night, never giving up, and now finally the waiting was over. Margaret could barely walk. But she insisted on going to the bedroom. She returned with a box she had kept all those years. Inside letters, dozens of letters, never sent, written to daughters she did not know, and at the bottom, one specific letter, yellowed by time, dated March 1980. "I wrote this on the day you were born," Margaret said. "On the day I had to let you go." Sarah took the letter. Rachel stepped closer. They read it together. "To my daughters, I don't know if you will ever read this. I don't know if you will understand. I don't even know if I will still be alive when you discover the truth. But I need to explain. I did not want to let you go. I wanted so badly to stay. I wanted so badly to be the mother you deserved. But I couldn't. I had no way to do it. So I did the only thing I could do. I gave each of you a medal, the same medal of the Virgin Mary. And I prayed to the Virgin Mary. I asked her to protect you, to take care of you when I couldn't, to bring you back to one another someday. I will pray for this every day, every night. I pray that one day you will be together again, and if you are reading this together, then the prayer worked. Forgive me for letting you go. But know that I never, not for a single second, stopped loving you. Your mother, Margaret." Sarah let the letter fall. The tears would not stop coming. Rachel was crying too. And Margaret looked at her 2 daughters as if she were witnessing a miracle. Sarah took the medal from around her neck. Rachel did the same. The 2 medals were placed on the table, side by side, identical, the same last name, the same date, the same request from a mother who never stopped believing. "I thought it was just an object, but it wasn't. It never was," Sarah said. Rachel held her mother's hand. "Your prayer was answered." Margaret closed her eyes. A tear ran down her face. Can you imagine what Margaret felt in that moment? 43 years of guilt, of longing, of unanswered questions. finally finding peace. Margaret lived for 8 more months after that meeting, 8 months that were worth an entire lifetime. Sarah and Rachel took turns visiting her, sometimes together, sometimes separately, but always present. In the first months, Margaret wanted to know everything, every detail of the lives she had lost. "Tell me about the first day of school," she would ask. "Tell me about the first boyfriend. Tell me about the day you learned how to ride a bike," Sarah and Rachel told her. Stories that Margaret listened to with her eyes closed, as if she were trying to record every word in her memory. Sometimes she cried. "I missed all of this," she said. "I missed everything." But Sarah and Rachel always answered the same thing. "You didn't miss it. You're hearing it now. You're here now." Margaret met her grandchildren, 4 in total, 2 from each daughter. She called them "my little miracles." The grandchildren didn't fully understand the story. They were too young. But they understood that Grandma Margaret was special. They understood that she looked at them with a love that seemed too big to fit inside one person. The families came together in a way no one expected. Sarah's and Rachel's children became cousins. The husbands, Rachel's husband and Sarah's new boyfriend, became friends. Christmas, Thanksgiving, Easter. Dates that had once been celebrated separately now brought together dozens of people. An entire family built from 2 medals and a prayer. And Margaret? Margaret spent those last months in peace. For the first time in 43 years, she slept without guilt. She woke up without the weight of the decision she had made decades earlier. "I can go now," she said to her daughters one afternoon. "I've done what I needed to do. I've seen what I needed to see." Sarah held her hand. "Don't say that." Margaret smiled. "It's not sadness, my daughter. It's relief. It's peace. It's knowing it was worth it, that the waiting was worth it." Sarah changed after the reunion, not in a dramatic way, in a subtle way, a deep way. She began to pay more attention to the small miracles of everyday life, to patients who recovered when they weren't supposed to moments of calm in the middle of hospital chaos, to coincidences that maybe weren't coincidences. "I don't know if I've become religious," she told Rachel during a phone call, "but I do know that I stopped thinking we're alone." The medal was still around her neck, but now, when Sarah touched it, it wasn't just a reflex. It was a reminder. For Rachel, the change was even deeper. The dreams stopped. After 13 years of dreaming about a woman she didn't know, the dreams simply stopped. The emptiness she had always felt was filled. Not completely. Life doesn't work that way, but enough to make a difference. She began wearing the medal outside her clothes, not hidden. When people asked about it, she told the story of the twins, the story of the medals, the story of the mother who prayed for 43 years. Some people believed, others thought it was an exaggeration. Rachel didn't care. She knew what she had lived. Margaret passed away on a spring morning. Sarah and Rachel were by her side. In Margaret's hands, the 2 medals. "They brought me back to you," she said, her voice weak but clear. "They fulfilled the mission." Sarah held one hand. Rachel held the other. "Thank you," Margaret whispered. "Thank you for coming." She closed her eyes and smiled. 1 year later, Sarah and Rachel were sitting on Rachel's porch in Denver, the sun setting behind the mountains, a bottle of wine between them, each one wearing her medal around her neck. "Do you believe in miracles?" Rachel asked. Sarah thought for a moment. "I believe that 2 women who were never supposed to meet did meet. I believe that a mother prayed for 43 years and that the prayer was answered. I believe that 2 identical medals crossed time and distance to be here now together." She touched the medal on her neck. "I don't know if that's a miracle, but I know it's not a coincidence." Rachel smiled. "That's enough." They stayed silent for a moment, watching the sun disappear. 2 sisters, 2 lives, 2 medals, and a story that took 43 years to be completed. Before finishing, I want to invite you to be part of our prayer community to the Virgin Mary, a space of faith and hope where people from all over the world come together to pray and share graces received. If you feel in your heart the desire to be part of this chain of prayer, click below and become a member of the channel today, and come pray with us. And look, if you made it this far, all the way to the end of the story of Sarah and Rachel, do one thing for me. Write in the comments metal, the object that united two sisters separated for 43 years. I want to see how many hearts this story truly reached. And every time I read metal in the comments, I'll know that one more person believes that miracles of the Virgin Mary still happen. If this story touched your heart, subscribe to the channel and activate the notification bell. Write in the comments about a miracle you have already witnessed or experienced, and share this video with someone who needs to renew their hope today. Sometimes the miracle we are waiting for is just one prayer away. May the Virgin Mary continue blessing and protecting you and your family. Amen.